Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my channel? Thank you so much. Throughout my life, individuals have acknowledged my beauty. However, I never attempted to exploit it for my benefit. In my youth, I aspired to be a model, but that ambition ceased upon Marco's arrival in my life. He stated that they do not require the funds. Hence, he does not wish for me to proceed with it. At that time, his choice became my choice. At 42, I reside in the home of the guy who altered the trajectory of my life, cohabiting with his kid from his first marriage, Nico, who is 23. He recently completed his university education, specializing in photography and visual arts, and has returned home now. His area is located on the upper level of the duplex. It is his artistic refuge. He creates portraits of women and men, any individual in fact. Young girls frequently arrive and depart, posing for his artwork. Initially, I believed it pertained solely to his fervor for art. However, things altered the day I inadvertently left his door ajar. How could I have anticipated that a mere portrait sketch would result in all of this? I will explain how that one night with Nico evolved into something significantly more than merely assisting him. I am aware that you may criticize me for this, but I can no longer conceal it. That morning, Marco had departed from the residence. I ascended the stairs, and Nico's door was slightly open. I had no intention of entering, but as I passed by, I glimpsed the canvas within. What I saw halted me abruptly. It was my likeness. However, what worried me further was the sizable photograph affixed to the adjacent wall. It was a photograph I had shared on social media years prior. Each line on my visage, the profundity of my gaze, and the feelings I had at that moment were encapsulated in his artwork. I was unaware that Nico had observed me so intently. Upon realizing that he had downloaded my photograph and printed it to produce this portrait, it ought to have instilled fear in me, correct? However, it did not. I stood motionless at the doorway for a few moments. My heart raced, and a surge of excitement, together with an indescribable sensation, enveloped me. The depiction of me in that painting was distinct, more robust, more enthralling. Nico had depicted me as greater than I perceived myself to be. My hands quivered as I made contact with the door frame's edge. I could not remain there any longer. Silently, I pivoted and descended the stairs. My footsteps guided me to the kitchen, yet my heart continued to race. The depiction of that painting lingered in my memory. I figured it would merely be another artwork. However, I was mistaken. I never anticipated that moment would materialize into reality. Remember to subscribe and activate notifications for other narratives of this nature. I am confident that once you hear this story in its entirety, you will feel compelled to leave a remark. Since Nico's return home, an undeniable electricity has developed between us, an inexplicable phenomenon. Initially, everything appeared ordinary. Comforting, however, I observed Nick's gradual withdrawal over time. He began to allocate increasing amounts of time upstairs, confined in his room, laboring for extended periods. His door was typically locked, but the other day it was inadvertently left ajar for a brief while. That moment is indelibly etched in my memory. He had depicted me. He got one of my photographs from social media and rendered it on his canvas. Each brushstroke seemed to unveil an aspect of my identity. He was not merely applying paint to my face. He was illuminating my soul. Upon viewing that painting, an inward sensation was ignited within me. However, I was unable to articulate anything to Nico regarding the matter. The following day, boisterous noises from the upper floor drew my attention. A girl was shouting, her tone piercing and furious. Before I could comprehend the situation, the door to Nico's room burst open, and the girl exited abruptly. Her face was flushed with rage, tears cascading down her cheeks as she rushed by me in the corridor. My heart accelerated. I thought I should ascend the stairs. I vacillated, caught between remaining uninvolved and discovering the events that transpired. Ultimately, I was unable to restrain myself. I arrived at Nico's door and tapped gently. "Nico," I spoke, my tone uncertain. I proceeded to sigh, emanating from within. "Enter," he said, his voice weary and exposed. I ajar the door and entered. He stood in the center of the room, gazing at a canvas. The artwork remained incomplete. The colors and details were exquisite, although the overall composition appeared unfinished. "What is occurring?" I inquired, unable to conceal the apprehension in my tone. Nico bowed his head and gradually turned to confront me. His eyes exhibited a sense of helplessness. "That portrait," he remarked, his tone imbued with a trace of resignation. "I secured a contract for it, a significant project. The client requested a portrait of a poised, powerful, and attractive woman. They proposed a substantial sum of money. However, it transcends mere financial considerations, Judith. This constitutes my reputation. This initiative has the potential to advance my career. However, when I was creating that girl's portrait, I recognized it was not going to succeed. He would not have appreciated it. I would have disappointed him." His voice trembled. "What now?" "I must submit something novel by tomorrow. It is of utmost importance." Upon hearing his remarks, my heart began to race. His gaze was fixed onto mine, conveying a wordless entreaty. At that point, I contemplated the artwork I had observed recently and the manner in which Nico was gazing at me now. "Nico, what do you require from me?" I articulated, my voice quavering. He gulped audibly, then inhaled deeply. "Judith, I wish to depict you. You are the embodiment of strength, elegance, and beauty." I paused momentarily, uncertain of how to respond. "Is that correct?" I murmured, my voice scarcely perceptible. Nico approached, his gaze imbued with both resolve and reverence. "Judith, you may be unaware, but it is you, your beauty, elegance, and strength that reside within you. I require your assistance to complete this. I lack time and need your help. If you concur, we can proceed discreetly in unison." A portion of me was vehemently urging that I should immediately decline. However, another aspect was captivated by Nico's comments, the warmth in his gaze, the sincerity in his tone. I was unable to cease contemplating the painting. I observed his perception of me and the emotions it evoked within me. "Nico, are you certain?" I inquired, catching his gaze. He asserted with unwavering conviction, his voice subdued yet firm. "This is not merely a painting, Judith. This will transform everything." A hiatus occurred. My heart was racing as I contemplated the appropriateness of my actions when my gaze fell upon the garment Nico was holding. The garment was a black silk dress that adhered closely to the body. It exposed the shoulders and cascaded gracefully to unveil an appropriate extent of leg. "This is somewhat excessive," I remarked, emitting a slight anxious chuckle. Nico advanced another step, his gaze warm and unwavering. "It will appear impeccable on you. I only wish to see you at your optimum. Have confidence in me, Judith." I inhaled deeply. My reluctance gradually dissipated in response to Nico's sincere remarks. I inclined my head slightly, proceeding with the task. Nico exhibited a sincere, welcoming smile that alleviated all my apprehensions. At that point, we commenced our anticipation for the arrival of darkness. However, I instinctively sensed that this would transcend mere artistry. This evening seemed poised to transform everything for both of us. Upon Marco's return home, I endeavored to ensure that all appeared customary. I remained silent at supper while Nico behaved as if nothing was amiss. However, whenever our gazes intersected, even briefly, the unarticulated tension between us lingered palpably in the atmosphere. After confirming that Marco had succumbed to slumber, I inhaled deeply. My pulse raced as I stealthily ascended the stairs to Nico's chamber. I cautiously opened the door. The room was illuminated by a gentle, pleasant radiance. Candles illuminated every corner, suffusing the place with a comforting warmth. Soft music emanated in the background, enhancing the inviting environment. Nico stood in the corner, holding a bottle of wine. He elevated his drink in my direction. He welcomed me, his voice composed yet imbued with a distinct warmth. I remarked, surveying the arrangement in the room. "It is exceptionally well conceived. This evening is significant," he remarked with a subtle smile. "All aspects must be flawless for you." I swallowed with difficulty, yet a little smile emerged on my lips. At that time, rather than interrogating my actions, I chose to embrace the present. Nico indicated the corner of the room. "I have prepared a spot for you to get ready. Your dress. SS is located over there." I acquiesced and proceeded to the corner. I observed from the periphery of my vision that Nico had averted his gaze from me. That minor gesture alleviated some of my anxiety. I donned the dress and observed my reflection in the mirror. The black silk conformed to my figure impeccably. My shoulders were exposed, and the neckline elegantly accentuated my collarbone. "Nico, I am prepared," I stated. However, my voice emerged as just a whisper. He pivoted, and his gaze fixed onto me. They exhibited admiration, not of the artistic variety for a subject, but more the type a man holds for a lady. "Excellent," he articulated deliberately, elevating his glass once more. "Are you able to occupy that chair?" I approached the chair he indicated. It was sophisticated and reminiscent of antiquity, possessing a charm that complemented the ambience. Upon sitting down, a blend of exhilaration and anxiety surged within me. Nico filled a glass with wine and presented it to me. "You should unwind this evening. The wine will assist." I took a sip, our gazes intersecting once more. "I must refrain from excessive drinking, lest I get overly relaxed," I remarked with a gentle smile. Nico chuckled while pulling his chair closer to the easel. "You are worthy of this. This evening is entirely focused on you. Your presence will finish this picture." For a period, stillness pervaded the room. The atmosphere was palpable as Nico's gaze shifted between me and the canvas, his brush executing purposeful strokes. I recognized I ought to have diverted my gaze. However, I was unable to do so. I sipped my wine and looked at him. "Isn't it challenging to operate in this manner?" I inquired, my tone a blend of apprehension and cordiality. "Difficult," he remarked with a slight chuckle. "Conversely, this moment feels like the most authentic experience I have ever encountered." He halted momentarily, descending his brush and gazing directly into my eyes. "Judith, are you aware it transcends me? Aesthetics? I have never encountered an individual who embodies both grace and strength simultaneously." His remarks rendered me speechless. "Nico, you are exaggerating," I stated. However, as the words left my lips, I sensed their profound impact on me. He asserted that he was not exaggerating. His gaze remained fixed on mine. "I am genuinely fortunate to share this occasion with an individual of your caliber. Creating your likeness transcends mere labor for me. It is a method of comprehending you." At that point, the tension in the room became nearly palpable. He resumed using his brush, albeit with diminished speed, his gaze continually shifting from the canvas to me. "The evening is merely commencing," he remarked with a subtle smile. "Upon the completion of this artwork, everything will irrevocably change." I took another sip of my wine and finally comprehended his meaning. This evening transcended the mere act of portraiture. This night was destined to transform us while seated in the chair. I completely lost track of time. Nico sat before the canvas, each brushstroke embodying a fragment of his essence. Occasionally, he would halt and look at me. In his gaze, I discerned more than mere artistic admiration. It was a man's esteem. As I sipped the wine, I increasingly experienced relaxation. Nico would pause for a respite around every 30 minutes. During the initial intermission, we merely exchanged a few words. His gaze scrutinized me, yet there was a boundary he refrained from crossing. By the second intermission, that distinction began to fade. I could not discern whether it was the wine or the tension between us. As he approached and delicately grasped my hand, I became immobilized. "Judith, you appear exquisite," he spoke with a kind and gentle tone. I remained motionless for a minute, allowing the sensation of his fingers on mine to permeate my awareness. It was during the third intermission that the boundary between us nearly vanished. Nico extended his hand, delicately repositioning a strand of hair that had fallen over my shoulder. My breath was momentarily halted. "Judith," he stated, his gaze fixed upon mine, "this painting may not adequately capture your magnificence. Nevertheless, I shall endeavor to do so." That contact and those utterances drew us nearer with each interval. Nevertheless, we successfully remained on the precipice without entirely transgressing that limit. 3 hours had elapsed by the conclusion of the night. Nico completed one last stroke with his brush and reclined, placing it down with a profound exhalation. "It is completed," he stated, his eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. "Are you prepared?" I rose, concluding the final sip of my wine. I was somewhat inebriated, although my thinking remained lucid. I approached him, my heart thumping. Upon viewing the painting, my breath caught. "This is remarkable, Nico," I remarked, unable to divert my gaze from the artwork. The figure shown in the picture was I. Nico had not merely confined me physically, he had apprehended a more profound essence, the emotions reflected in my eyes, the elegance of my posture, and the strength I was previously unaware of possessing. Everything was present on the canvas. Nico faced me. "You are remarkable, Judith. This is not merely a depiction of you. It is you." your beauty, your strength, and all that encompasses you. At that point, I was unable to regulate my emotions. I approached him and encircled my arms around his neck. "Thank you," I murmured, my voice quavering. The embrace was initially harmless. However, when Nico encircled my waist with his arms and leaned nearer to my face, a transformation occurred within me. It seemed as though all barriers between us had vanished. Our breaths converged, and the flickering candlelight in the room rendered everything more strange. I began to speak to Nico, however. The words dissipated. At that moment, I recognized that his lips were but a breath away from mine, and it seemed as though there was no turning back. He approached me, addressing me as Judith, his gaze fixed on mine, his speech resonant and imbued with emotion. "I must convey a message to you. I can no longer contain it." He halted for several seconds, inhaling deeply. "I have affection for you, yet it is beyond mere infatuation. I have had these feelings for you for an extended period. I have attempted to conceal it, but I am unable to do so." His words enveloped the room, cascading over me like a surge of warmth. My heart raced, my thoughts whirled. "Nico, I murmured. In that instant, I discerned an additional insight. I was also attracted to him, and it was no longer deniable. Nico advanced further. We were only a breath apart. His hands softly navigated to my waist. "Since our initial encounter, I have perceived you in this manner, Judith. You must comprehend that." Upon concluding his statement, he gradually inclined towards me, and our lips gently connected. My breath was momentarily halted. The warmth of his lips and the touch of his hands dissolved any boundaries between us. Upon the conclusion of the kiss, he gazed into my eyes briefly. However, that gaze was non-interpretive. It constituted a response. At that juncture, retreat was not an option. I grasped the straps of my dress and gradually removed them from my shoulders. The silk cloth cascaded down my body, accumulating at my feet. The candlelight in the room illuminated my exposed skin. I observed the admiration in Nico's eyes intensify. He remained silent. Verbal communication was unnecessary at that moment. His hands softly encircled my waist, drawing me toward the expansive couch. That evening, everything transformed. The connection between us, the intimacy, was no longer deniable. I reclined on the couch, my heart racing and my breath irregular. Nico gazed into my eyes and offered a gentle grin. He discarded his garments and threw them next to my clothing. All obstacles between us had entirely vanished. He inclined toward me, his hands softly positioned on my waist as his lips pressed a passionate kiss across my neck. A shiver coursed through my entire body. The shiver was not only a result of his contact, it originated from a profound sensation that I had not experienced in a considerable while, awakening within me. His lips gradually traversed from my neck to my shoulder, igniting an unprecedented passion within me. My hands instantly located his back. I sensed the tightness in his muscles and the heat emanating from his body. Nico's breath imprinted on my skin, and with each touch, he drew me more to him. "Judith," he murmured, his tone subdued and laden with sentiment, "you surpass my most vivid imaginings of beauty." Consequently, everything accelerated. I perceived the authenticity in his remarks as I gazed at him. However, his resolute actions diverted my attention from feelings to a completely distinct experience, an unrestrained, irrepressible exhilaration. His lips connected with mine once more, this time with greater intensity and depth. My hands intertwined with his hair as the moment's intensity obliterated all thoughts in my mind. I firmly grasped the couch cover with my other hand. I endeavored to maintain my silence. At that time, I attempted to open my eyes, but my body had assumed control. My muscles contracted, and with each contact, it felt as though surges of electricity were flowing through me. Nico's kisses descended, traversing my neck. His hands traversed my skin, imparting a warmth that permeated my body. I surrendered entirely to him, my mind engulfed by the moment's intensity. He loomed above me, his gaze imbued with a blend of astonishment and fervent longing. His respiration had accelerated, and his speech exhibited an involuntary tremor. "Is this a dream, Judith?" he murmured. At that time, I attempted to open my eyes, but my body had assumed control. I focused my sight on the ceiling while my hands clutched the blanket increasingly tightly. Nico inched closer, his face within inches from mine. His lips grazed my ear as he articulated, "Judith, you are the cause of my feelings. I never envisioned you in this manner." Yet his respiration was shallow and irregular. "You are more authentic than anything else," he persisted. I was shaking intensely, fearing I would entirely lose my composure. Ultimately, Nico relinquished his restraint. "This was not a dream. This was a reality I had been unwittingly anticipating for an extended period. Allow me to express this. Our narrative does not conclude here. Remain attentive. If you have reached this point, I am aware that my narrative has profoundly affected you. There is far more to convey, and you will not wish to overlook any detail. Ensure to click the follow button, activate notifications, and provide a remark regarding this narrative.